Hello and welcome back to the CardRPG Scriptable Object tutorial, part 10 for Unity, where we will be working on the EnemyManager and attaching it to the enemy so that we're able to actually have turns in the game. What we're going to do is right-click in the hierarchy and click Create Empty. Hit F2, call it EnemyManager. Make sure that the position rotation is at 0, 0, 0. We're going to drag it up into the Manager section up here, just to keep it organized. And we're going to go into the Manager section of the scripts folder. We're going to right click and create a new C# script called EnemyManager. We're going to go inside that. Let's get ready to start an update for now. We'll be using them later. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a public static EnemyManager instance. Now you can copy the instances from other managers as well if you want to, because we can do the awake method where with the if instance is not equal to null and instance is not equal to this, then we can destroy this.gameObject return instance is equal to this. We have that all set up. Now above that, where the rest of the variables are going to go, we do a public transform spawn spot. So there's a spot for the enemy to actually appear. There's another public game object, which we're going to be calling enemy prefab. Now we're going to have another thing. We're going to have a header, and the header is going to say all enemy data here. So first thing is going to be a public list of an integers is enemy index is a new list of integers. We'll do another public list. This is going to be of the scriptable object, so of enemy data. We're going to call this enemy indexed data equals new list of enemy data. And then one more dictionary from int to enemy data called enemy dictionary equals a new dictionary. So now inside the start method, where we just type start, hit enter. If you're in Visual Studio 2017, it'll pre-fill the private void. So we're going to do a for tab, anti-0 I is less than enemy indexed data dot count, and then we're going to do enemy index dot add position I. We're going to do another for loop, and it's going to be enemy index dot count, and we're going to be doing enemy dictionary dot add I and enemy indexed data in I position. Next, we're going to do an int r equals random.range from 0 to enemy dictionary dot count. That will now pick something in one of the enemies in the dictionary. That way we can spawn enemy. And it's going to be enemy dictionary at space r. That'll be whatever number this is. So you could effectively have any enemy in the game and it'll still have that random chance. You can weight this if you wanted to with different percentage values. We're just going to do it as a completely random number. So now, we can do one of two things. We can either right spawn enemy down there, or we can do control and period, which is generate method. You hit enter, and there it is. If you do it this way, it creates a using system up here, which then throws an error for the random right here, because system has its own random as well and not Unity engine. And then we have to go up here and remove system, which will then fix that, and then we can get rid of that line. We're going to change this to a public call in case we need to use it from anywhere else, like if we have an event or anything. And so now GameObject G equals instantiate enemy prefab at spawn spot. g.getComponent enemy. So now we're looking at the enemy. E-data equals enemy data. Enemy data. So now the number that we picked here, right? This is a dictionary of enemy datas. So all the different scriptable objects. So we picked one randomly, and now we're spawning that one and attaching it to the enemy so that it pre-fills based on the section in the beginning of the script for the enemy where it's collect info from data. So now we can actually pull that information. So we need a way to reference to the enemy manager who the correct enemy is for combat purposes. So let's do Control comma, open up Combat Manager, and we're going to add right here before starting health. It'll be public enemy current enemy, and you can always make that a list if you're going to have multiple enemies instead of one enemy. You just have to do a for loop for everything that we use this for instead. So now let's go back. So we're going to hit the little back arrow here. Should bring us right back to the enemy manager. And we're going to do combat manager dot instance dot current enemy equals g.getComponent enemy. If we wanted to optimize this even further, we could effectively do enemy e equals g.getComponent enemy, and then make these just e. So there's only one call instead. If you wanted to, you don't have to. It's not a requirement to make anything easier. Effectively, this game doesn't really have many moving parts to it, so it's not going to be the laggiest thing in the world. So now here's the next. This is the fun part. Public void choose intents for next turn. Enemy E. We're going to pass in an enemy for this so that we can get the intents from it. So now we're going to be able to pick the intent based on random rolling or weighted rolling, however you want to do it. First we need int r, so we need to call a random number, random.range, between 0 and e.edata.allIntents.length. So now we need that number of how many intents this enemy has. So then e.thisTurnIntent.clear to make sure that it's completely empty. Then we need to call EnemyData.EnemyIntents intent. That way we can save this. Equals e.edata.allIntents in space r. So now we've effectively grabbed the intent that we filled out back here for the enemy scriptable objects. We've filled out these intents here. We've now stored a random one of these, or a random one of these, right? So now we're gonna do a for loop for tab. Hit tab once to skip the I. We can do intent.intent.length. Now we can do e.thisTurnIntent.add and add the intent. So now this intent is now queued up for this round. Now we typically only have one intent that happens at a time right now. You could effectively merge some abilities together, or some intents together. You could do a attack and defense at the same time. We're not going to do that just yet. If we need to in the future, we can. We're going to do a switch. So we're going to do switch, tab, and a switch on. We're going to do a switch on e.thisTurnIntent 0.intent 0 and hit enter. It pre-fills the intent type. You can do a for loop based on however many intents exist in this turn intent, and you can run each one if you wanted to. That would probably be the easiest way to do that. And we might go back and do that if we end up making a character that requires that information. So for the attack section, we're going to do int damage equals e.thisTurnIntent strength, because we know how strong that is. We're going to do e.intent image .sprite equals e.sprite attack, and then e.intent amount text text equals damage.toString. That's all it is for now, until we add in like effects and stuff like that, which will happen in the future. For defend, it's going to be very similar to how the attack one is set up. We're just going to do e.intent image.sprite equals e.sprite defense. But we're going to do e.intent amount text equals blank. We don't want to show them how much defense there is. This is before the defense applies. Basically, it's going to show that the enemy is going to defend. Then you hit end turn and the enemy chooses to defend for X amount of damage. Or X amount of block. We're going to copy this. We're going to paste it inside buff. And again inside disable. We have to just change. All we have to do now is change the sprite to the correct sprite. So sprite intent buff and sprite intent disable. We can go past the end of the switch, and we can now do a public IEnumerator take enemy turn. We're going to pass in an enemy E. We'll be calling this from a different script. We're going to do a yield, return, new, wait for seconds. It's going to be 0.5 seconds, so half a second of waiting. Then do the intent. So whichever intent has been chosen, which is basically a for loop. So for tab, hit tab one more time to skip I. We're going to do e.thisTurnIntent.count because the intent has been chosen already. Then we're going to pull a switch of e.thisTurnIntent I.intent I. So now what happens on each of the intents, right? Well, the first one for the case of attack, it's going to be combat manager .instance.take damage based on e.thisTurnIntent strength. So we had set that up already. That's all that is. Defend is going to be e.add defense. It's going to be e.thisTurnIntent strength. Inside buff, we're not going to do anything yet. This is going to be to do add status effect to enemy. And then inside disable, we'll be doing the same thing. So this will be add status effect to player. After the switch, we're going to yield, return, new, wait for seconds, 1.5. So we're going to basically do damage, wait a second and a half, and then we're going to end the turn. We could effectively here, if you wanted to, inside this group, so do intent and visual effects. So if you wanted to add a slash on the screen for taking damage, or like a block kind of show up a certain way, this is your spot to do visual effects. So now we're going to do end enemy turn. We don't have that yet, so we're going to do a public void end enemy turn. Inside of this is a to do. This will be reduce player special effects, or reduce player status effects at end of turn. And then card manager instance start new turn. Now we have to go make that. So this is in the card manager, so we're going to just hit F12 when we are highlighting card manager. Brings us to the card manager script. We're going to scroll down to the bottom here. We're going to do a public void start new turn. So a couple things are going to reset at the start of every turn. So combat manager .instance.current block equals 0. And then is starting draw is true, and initial draw for turn. So now, when we start a new turn, this should work. Let's go back to Unity. And we're going to drag the EnemyManager script onto the EnemyManager. So now it requires a couple things. We need a spawn spot. So we're going to right click in the hierarchy. We're going to hit create empty. We're going to call this enemy spawn. It's going to be at 0, -0.5, 0. We'll put a little orange marker here for it as well. What that shows is here, it shows us a little enemy spawn thing where it actually sits, so where the enemy will sit. So now, in the EnemyManager, we can drag the enemy spawn in to the spawn spot. Enemy prefab, we're going to pull it from the actual prefab, so right here. Now we need to pre-fill the enemy data. In the enemy index data, we need to mark all of the enemies in any order, doesn't really matter. So we're going to do passive goblin and angry goblin. You could put more passive goblins if you want less chance of an angry goblin. You could weight it this way if you wanted to as well. It's going to basically read these and it'll toss one of them in to the game. So what we need to do now is we need to go to the enemy here. We're going to right click here and click revert value to prefab. That'll set it to none so that we actually remove this enemy and the actual enemy spawns in instead. So we hit play. The new enemy appears with its health and its current intent, which is not set up right. In the card manager, there is a spot in here called initial draw for turn. So we're going to use the little drop down arrow over here and find it. Initial draw for turn. We have the setup what enemies do at the beginning of your turn. This to do right here, we're going to get rid of. We're going to actually call this instead Combat Manager instance current enemy dot on new turn. So now with hitting play, it should work. So now we already have this that exists here. If you hit F12, you see that there is just nothing. So all we need to do here is just EnemyManager instance choose intents for next turn and call this because it needs to call an enemy. And this closes up all the issues. Wait for this to compile and we hit the play button and boom. It says the goblin's going to be hitting for 0 damage. So it seems that we missed something in the EnemyManager that's actually not corresponding to the intent strength. So we need to go back to the choose intents for next turn section of enemy. We have to do after the for loop, we do e.thisTurnIntent strength equals intent.amount. And now it should work fine. We're going to hit play. And look, so this is a disable. So now you're going to be against the disable when you hit end turn. Let's hit play again and see what happens. Now it's going to be attacking for 5. This is actually working out really well. In the next video, we'll be syncing up the rest of the turn together, having the attacks actually do damage to the goblin or the enemy, and being able to end your turn and getting attacked yourself. So that will be the next video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Really do appreciate it. If you liked what you watched, please hit the like button. If you really like it, hit the subscribe button. We are trying to get all these tutorials done by the end of February. We'll see how close we get to that. But until next time, guys, again, thank you so much for hanging out. Just to reiterate, my Patreon is where these videos are uploaded 1 week early. So if you want access to them, the link is in the description. And until next time, guys, have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace out.